Today, we are going to learn to steal the moon! So I put this right at the beginning of this video in case I need to cut this part out due to copyright reasons. Let's head on over to the real first page of this video. Hey everyone, I am Ms. Hu, your physics teacher. In this video, we are going to go through the phases of the moon, where we're going to be understanding the patterns of the lunar phases. Now, first things first, I would like to say thank you to Canva for these slides. Canva made all of these slides. Now, normally I do use Canva to make my slides from scratch. However, in this case, I like to give credit where it's due. All the text, content, and images are all from Canva. So I'd like to go through the slides with you because all of these are factually accurate. So thank you, Canva. In case you're wondering why is there a physics with Miss Ho on the side, it's because I'm doing the talking, alright? So, let's get started. So first things first, we have to know about some basics of the moon. The moon is the Earth's only natural satellite and it's the 5th largest moon in the solar system. Here are some statistics of the moon. Now, if you're taking IGCSE Physics, you don't need to know all the stats, but still interesting to know anyway. So the diameter is approximately 3,476 kilometers. Its mass is approximately 81 quintillion pounds. The distance from Earth is approximately 384,400 kilometers. The orbital period is approximately 27.3 Earth days, and its gravity is about 1/6 of Earth's gravity. Now, in case you're wondering, do you need to memorize all these numbers? Good news, no. If you were answering any questions, especially for your IGCSE Physics, any of this information will be provided to you in the question if you need to use it. What you do need to know are the phases of the moon. So here are the 4 main phases. When the moon is not visible from Earth, it's known as the new moon. It's waxing when the moon appears to start growing larger. That means it's in between the new moon and the full moon. So the full moon phase is when the entire illuminated side of the moon is visible from Earth. Then, as the full moon starts heading back to the new moon, it's known as waning. That means the moon appears to grow smaller. Now remember that the moon is not actually growing and shrinking. The moon's size does not change. Why it appears to us as if it's growing and shrinking is because it depends on how much of the moon is illuminated. So the Earth is actually casting a shadow on the moon as the moon orbits the Earth. So we'll take a look at the position of the moon, Earth, and Sun in a little bit. But for now, let's learn about the complete cycle. Just going to move my face a little bit. So the lunar cycle is a recurring sequence of changes in the moon's appearance as seen from Earth, which begins with the new moon phase and progresses through waxing phases, full moon, waning phases before returning to the new moon phase again. So as you can see, this is the new moon and it's the full moon. And as the moon moves from new moon to full moon, you can see the part of the moon that is illuminated is growing. And when it moves from the full moon to the new moon, the illuminated part is shrinking. So one lunar cycle completes in approximately 29.5 Earth days. Now, you might note that the lunar cycle appears to be slightly different from the orbital period of the moon that we saw just now at 27.3 days. Yes, they are different, and the reason for the difference is something to do with the moon's orbital path. The moon does not orbit on the same path. The path may change slightly as the Earth travels around the Sun, causing the moon's orbit to change a little bit as well. So generally, these are average values. Good news, you don't need to explain the difference between the cycle and the orbital period. Just be aware that yes, there are different values, and the reason for the difference is because the orbit is not exactly along the same path. They change depending on the position of the Earth, the Sun, and the moon. So how come we see only certain parts are illuminated at certain points? Let's start from new moon. So the new moon is a phase of the moon where it appears completely dark in the sky, and this happens because during this phase the side of the moon that is facing the Earth is not illuminated by the sun. So the sun is over here, the Earth is orbiting the sun, and you can see the moon is orbiting the Earth. So at this point the moon is between the Earth and the sun. Now this part of the moon is illuminated, but we're not here, are we? We're seeing the moon from here on Earth. So because this part is completely in the shadows, we can't see the moon. That's why it's known as the new moon phase. It appears completely dark. Is the moon there? Yes, it is. We just can't see it. As the moon moves, now we can see part of the moon being illuminated. Now half the moon is illuminated by the sun while the other half is in shadows, pretty much like how Earth is in day and night. But we only see a small part of the moon as lit up, and at this point it's waxing crescent. So the moon appears as a thin crescent shape in the sky with only a small portion of its surface illuminated. During this phase, the moon moves further away from the sun and more of its illuminated side becomes visible. If you're trying to imagine, okay, how come we're seeing a crescent based on this? Here's what you can think of. We're on Earth, we can see the moon from here. So, to help you visualize how much of the moon you can see, it's like this. So, I'm going to color it this way. You can see that it's this half of the moon that you can see, and 3/4 of it is dark, about 1/4 of it is lit up. So something like this. So it's not a straight line because the moon is somewhat of a spherical shape. So that's why there's a little bit of a curve. Based on this, you can see, yeah, it's only a small portion of the moon that is illuminated, and that's why we see a crescent shape. So because it's growing in size, that's why it's waxing crescent. Then we head on to first quarter, where the moon appears as a half circle in the sky. So during this point, the moon is 1/4 of the way through its orbit around the Earth. So as you can see, started here, it's around 1/4 of its orbit. That's why it's the first quarter. So again, similar to just now, how to visualize how much of the moon we're able to see. This is half of the moon. So we can see this side of the moon, half is lit up. Half is illuminated and the other half is in shadows. That's why we see only half the moon. As the moon continues to move further away from the sun, it is now waxing gibbous. So the moon appears in a mostly illuminated crescent shape with only a small part appearing dark. So this occurs as the moon continues to move away from the first quarter phase and closer to the full moon phase. At this point, you can see a bigger part of the moon is now illuminated with a smaller fraction in shadows. And to help you visualize, again, I'm just going to draw that half line. You can see based on this half line, about 3/4 more or less is now lit up and part of it is in darkness. By the way, when I say 3/4, it doesn't have to be 3/4. It's anywhere between 50.1% to 99.9%. Same thing with the crescent just now. So anywhere between the new quarter to the full moon phase. So it keeps growing larger and larger. The gibbous moon is getting larger and larger. That's why it's waxing gibbous until it reaches the full moon. So during this phase, the entire face of the moon that is visible from Earth is fully illuminated. This occurs when the moon is on the opposite side of the Earth from the sun, with the Earth between the sun and the moon. So the moon now can be fully seen because this entire face is now illuminated by the sun, as you can see. So as the moon now travels closer to the sun, we get the opposite, where it's now waning gibbous. Similar to just now, we have a larger part of the moon that's illuminated and a smaller part is in darkness. And as the moon moves away from full moon phase towards the next phase, which is the third quarter, that will be gibbous, again between 99.9% to 49.9%. Then it hits on over to third quarter because it's now 3/4 of its path, right? So the third quarter moon is a phase of the moon that occurs approximately 3 weeks after the new moon phase. And during this phase, the moon appears as a half moon shape with half of its face illuminated by sunlight. So again, visualize it like this. So you can see half the moon is illuminated and the other half in darkness. And then we head on over to waning crescent. So at waning crescent, a smaller part is illuminated while a majority is in darkness, and this is between 49.9% to 0.1%. So this is the waning crescent phase, which is the phase of the moon that occurs approximately 3 weeks after the full moon phase. During this phase, the moon appears as a thin crescent with a small portion of its face illuminated by sunlight. And of course, after this, it's back to the new moon, which will start another lunar cycle. Now, let's go through a bonus section, which I have included in this video lesson for you. How to identify the phase of the moon. By now, we already know the different phases of the moon within the lunar cycle. And of course, there are some phases which are really easy to identify. For example, you can easily identify the new moon and the full moon, like duh, right? But there are some phases of the moon which look pretty similar. For example, the crescent moons, you don't know whether they're waxing or waning. Or the half moon, which one's waxing or waning. And also the gibbous moons. So they look really similar. Now, one way which you can use is to memorize that during the waxing phases, the illumination is on the right side of the moon, whereas the waning phases will have the illumination on the left side of the moon. The problem is if you memorize it wrongly, then you're going to get your answers wrong. So what I'll go through now is how to use your logic to figure it out. What we're going to go through now is going through the different phases of the moon again. Now, first things first, you must be aware that the moon orbits in a counterclockwise direction. Most of the planets and moons will orbit in a counterclockwise fashion. So if we look at the new moon, as discussed earlier, the shaded part is facing the Earth, and that's why we see a dark moon. Now, when the moon reaches this part, we know that it's a waxing crescent because, as I've said earlier, from Earth we will observe the moon this way. This is the part of the moon which we can see. And remember that our eye is on Earth. So if this is where our eye is, which I've colored here in green, from our perspective, you can see that if you place your eye here, the dark side is on the left and the illumination is on the right side. So if you were to look, you twist your head and you look, okay, like this, yeah, you can see how, yeah, this is on the left side and that's on the right side. That's why the illumination is on the right side of the moon. That's why when the moon is on the waxing crescent stage, the illumination is on the right side. Same thing for the first quarter. Again, imagine that this is where our eye position is. So when we look at the moon, we're now looking this way, right? So you can turn and look and see, okay, yep, at this stage, this is on the left and this is on the right, and that's why the illumination is on the right side. So even though it may look different here, remember that we're observing the moon from the Earth. So our point of view is this way. So this same method is applied to all the others as well. So for the waxing gibbous, again, our eye position is here. So that's why we see the dark side on the left and the illumination on the right side. Of course, for full moon, goes without saying, duh, right? The whole moon is lit up. And then for the waning gibbous, now you can see when we observe the moon this way, we have the illumination now on our left side and the dark part of the moon is on the right. That's why we see the moon this way. Left illuminated, right part is a bit dark. Same thing for the third quarter, which is the half moon. So when we observe the moon this way, this part is the left, this part's the right. So the illumination is on the left of the moon and the dark areas on the right. Then when we head on over to the waning crescent, our eye is here. So that's why we see the illuminated part on the left and the dark part on the right. So how do we figure out whether it's waxing or waning? So how you can do it is you draw the position of the moon and try to figure it out from here. So if you had to figure out whether it's waxing or waning, I'll just go through both right now. What we can do is we draw where the moon would be. So the crescent, as we know, should be somewhere over here or over here. So if this is where our eye would be, this is our point of view, when we're looking at the moon, remember that this part is illuminated while this part is in darkness. Right? So this part is illuminated, this part is in darkness. So when we're looking at it, so we're looking, you can see the illuminated part is on our right. So if the illuminated part is on our right, that means this is waxing, this is waxing. Whereas when we're looking at the moon from here, where our point of view is this side, so this half of the moon is lit by the sun while the back part is in darkness over here. So when we look at it, now you can see, okay, you can see, okay, right side is dark, left side is lit up. So this stage, it's waning. So remember that the moon is orbiting in a counterclockwise direction. The new moon is here, so waxing, and this part would be waning. So this is the waning crescent, this is the waxing crescent. You can do the same thing to figure out the other phases as well. So for example, if you have the half moon, you're like, oh, which one's the first quarter and which one's the third quarter? So let's say you couldn't even remember, oh, which part of the orbit would be where the half moon is. Is it over here? Is it over here? Is it over here? Is it in between? What you do is just do a quick sketch. Say, oh, okay, here is where it's lit up. Oh, wait, we're looking at the moon from here. It's completely dark. Obviously, that's not correct. So try drawing it for the entire orbit and see which one matches if you really need to. So what I'll do now is just color the half of the moon which is lit up by the sun, and then take a quick look and you should be able to see, oh yeah, the half moon is here and here. So when you're looking at the moon from the earth at this point of view, you can see, let me put my face here, you can see, okay, yeah, you're looking right? So you've got the left side lit up and the right side is dark. So remember that this part is waxing and this part is waning. So when you're looking at the moon from this point of view, you can see that the lit part is on the right side. Okay, look at, yeah, right side. And then the dark part is on the left side. Right side. So this is our right, this is the waxing half moon or first quarter. That says quarter, by the way. Or first quarter. The other half moon is on this side. So when you're looking at the moon from this point of view, you can see that here, when you're looking at it, the dark part is on the right side and the illuminated part is on the left side. So this matches this, dark part on the right side. So this is the third quarter. So it starts from here, first quarter, half, third quarter. Third quarter. Again, same thing if you had to determine which gibbous moon is waxing or waning. So by now we already know, okay, we've got the first crescents and the quarters. So the gibbous is somewhere here, right? So the gibbous around here or here. So when you look at the moon from the earth, you can see, when you look at it, this side is our right and this side is the left. We're looking right. Okay, so our right side is illuminated and the left side is in darkness. Right side is illuminated, so this is for this moon. And then when you're looking at the other gibbous moon, our left side is illuminated and the right side is in darkness, just like this, left side illuminated. So this moon is for this position. So remember that this part is waxing and this part is waning. So this is the waning gibbous and it's the waxing gibbous. So that's how you can quite quickly and logically figure out which moon is in which phase and whether it's waxing or waning. And that's it about the moon. So if you found this video educational and helpful, do click like and subscribe for more physics lessons by your physics teacher, Miss Ho. Do help me keep making free educational video lessons and lab practicals. Donations are welcomed at my Ko-fi page. That's ko-fi.com/physicsrocks. For notes, quizzes, and syllabus updates, please visit my website at physicsrocks.com. Happy studying!